Hello everyone and welcome back to Macro Day, and today we are talking about a macro that gives you precise as well as conditional control over your application's toolbar. It is the key to making your app smarter, safer and of course more user friendly. So we're going to dive into the SC_button_disabled. So let's dive in, shall we? Okay, so we have today the SC_BTN for button_disable macro. And this macro is pretty interesting because, of course, I've used this so many times and it has a very specific purpose, and that is to dynamically enable, yes, enable as well, or disable, as the name implies, a specific button on your application toolbar. So it allows you to grey out as well as prevent access to buttons based on user roles, or of course the data that you have currently loaded within your Scriptcase application. And that is of course very important for security as well as any other conditional logic that you may create within your applications. So this is crucial for data security, of course, and helping you ensure that your users only attempt the actions that you authorize, or should I say, that they are authorized to apply or process or do or whatever it is. And of course, with that, you have full power, but only with this SC_button_disable macro. And with this macro, as all of them, we have some very specific parameters that we can apply in here. So we have SC_button_disable, and this macro, as I said, we have some very specific parameters here that we can apply, and it's pretty straightforward because first of all we need to indicate the button name. So we have the button that we want to target, right? So that could then be, for instance, well, that could be the delete button. Maybe you don't want somebody to delete something within your application. And then we can then add after that another parameter, which is then the on or the off function. So we can then switch it on or switch it off, and then we can apply that within our switch, within our if-else statement, or within our logic that we have prepared for the specific application. And this does work pretty much everywhere. Okay, so you will want to use this and know this macro. It is very important, especially when you want to ensure that your applications are secured and that functions and features are not available for those users that should not use them. So group security, beware. Okay, so with that, of course, we can then go ahead and apply this into our grid application or into our form or wherever else we need. And as I was saying, we can use this pretty much everywhere. So the form, the grid, the control, the calendar, as well as the chart applications. And you'd use this typically within the on script init, or maybe the on load or on load record, depending on which type of form you are using and the layout, of course. Now, with that, you can then hide the buttons as you need to within those applications. And it's very simple, of course, to apply some simple logic here. So we could maybe do a search within the database, and then depending on whatever our output is, we can switch a button on or off. And if you add buttons yourself, so if I come here and say open a new form, and let me choose any table here. I use the sales table. And if I come in here, for instance, let me also copy that macro here. So we can just copy this and then we can use it also here. Now, note that I was saying here on load. So if I come here on load and then on load record, and I need to indicate on or off here. So let me switch that off first of all. So I will comment that out and then run the form as it is. So we have here new, save, delete, exit. And if I come back here and comment this back out again and run the application, the delete button, well, we have an undefined function alert. So let's make sure we've actually disabled. There we go. Not disabled, disabled. Okay, so we add then our on or off status. Now, something very important to note here. Now, if I go ahead and run this grid application now, you'll see that it hasn't actually disabled anything. And that's because the on or off statement is actually the reversed way around, or opposite, should I say. So it's counterintuitive. Let's say that way. So instead of off, it should be on. And then if I save that now and then run this grid application, the delete button is now disabled. Remember that the macro says SC button disabled, and we're saying on. We want to switch that functionality on. So here, if I copy this and then place that here I can say then new and then run that also. And now the new button will also be disabled. And just like that, we can enhance the security of our applications. And we can apply any type of logic in there that we want to maybe perform searches or process something, and then delete or disable, should I say, the buttons as and when needed, depending on maybe the user or a specific event. And that could be, of course, after you have processed something. Now, it is important to note, first of all, as I was mentioning, the on or off is counterintuitive. So on means disabled and off means enabled. So let me add that in here. So if I say off here, and that then means enabled. Okay, and here disabled. Okay, and that is then the way around it goes. Now, if I copy this, for instance, and if I come here into a grid I had created previously, I have here the grid sales, and if I come here on script init, because that's where we then need to add that here, we have the new button. And what I've already done is I actually added a button in here. So I have here my button that I have added myself into this grid application. And then if I click save and then run that, it will be first of all off. Okay, there's no difference here. We have enabled it basically. We have not enabled this functionality, should I say. So now enabling that and switching on the SC button disabled functionality, we can then run that again. And now the button that I have added myself into this grid application is also disabled and no longer clickable. So as you can see, that is of course very important for security and within the majority of your applications in general. When you want to hide something or disable a button after a specific process, after insert, maybe after an update, or whenever that is. Of course, be sure to check out the Scriptcase documentation where you have more information on where and how to use it if need be. Now, in general, that is pretty much it with the SC button disabled. So if you're not just building applications, but you are maybe building intelligent context-aware interfaces, and I think you know what I'm talking about when I say that, then this guide will hopefully help you and your users protect your data. And it is all, of course, about creating a smarter, safer, and a more professional user experience, as well as with a nice, clean interface, and buttons being disabled as and when during specific processes is always very helpful and intuitive for the end user. Now, if you found this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe for more macro day goodness, and let me know in the comments how you are using this macro to control your application buttons. And I'll see you next week Friday right here for another Macro Day deep dive.